Hello and welcome back to my channel, Designs by Dana. I'm Dana and I'm also close to my heart maker. Today I'm working on day 9 of the Christie's Beautiful Life Sketch Challenge, and this sketch is created by Jessica Hill. I really like this sketch, and what drew me to it is these flowers, and it made me think of fall flowers. So let me pull in my pictures here. And these pictures look like they were taken in the fall, but they're actually taken Easter of this year. So I am going to work on these, and I'm not sure if I'm going to use a fall theme paper packet or a spring theme paper packet yet. And I think that's going to depend on what I draw in my bingo card. So here's my bingo card, and let's see. Let me bring in my little cup of items here. So I created this bingo card just for fun, to challenge me to use different types of embellishments and techniques that I haven't used in a while. And like I said, it's just for fun. But eyelets, so I have not used the eyelets in years, but I have a ton of them. So there's my eyelet box there. We will work on pulling in eyelets into this layout. And so this is my pictures. I think I'm going to keep them in the same orientation. And like I said, these were taken in Easter of this year, on Easter Day actually. So it looks like fall in the background, but it just, the leaves hadn't started budding back there in the trees. And this is the only pictures I have of us and our daughter. I'm only typically allowed to take one picture per holiday. But I snuck in an extra one with the dog there. So let me get this stuff out of the way and get some papers and everything picked out, and we'll come back and see what I can pull together. Okay, I'm going to start by bringing in my papers, and for this project I'm using the Daisy paper suite. And I'm going to start by preparing this striped piece of paper. I know that my flowers are going to contain a lot of yellow, and the paper doesn't really have a lot of yellow in it, or any yellow. So I want to alter the color of my pattern paper, and I'm going to do that by just adding strips of yellow cardstock to my pattern paper. So I've cut a strip of scrap paper here, and I'm going to use it as my guide. And I cut, I think they're 1/8 inch strips of the lemonade yellow cardstock. And so I'm going to put my glue down, and my tip for doing this is to put the glue down onto your project as opposed to trying to put it down onto your tiny strips of paper. And then it's just really easy to line up there along my guide and put it down, and the glue dries so quick, then it's super easy. I did decide that it would probably be a little easier to use my Versamat to line up my guide and keep everything nice and straight. So I bring my Versamat in, and I just tack down that striped piece of paper so it doesn't slide around on me. And then I can line up my guide here with the stripes on the paper, and then I'll continue that process. I don't want to add a lot of yellow into this paper, but I do want to add a little bit throughout. So I'm going to do it sparingly as I work my way down the piece of paper here. So again, I just put the glue onto my base sheet, add the strip of yellow, and voila. And like I said, this Barely Art glue, it goes on very thin because it has a very fine tip applicator, so there's not a lot of glue there. And once I put that 1/8 inch strip down, it dries very quick. So basically by the time I'm doing this part of it, it's already dry. I lift up my guide, and I'm ready to go on to the next piece. Another tip for doing projects like this is to cut your strips of paper a little bit longer and then trim them off when you're done. But I'm not having much problem here with lining everything up perfectly with the edges of the paper. So that hasn't been an issue for me with this project, but sometimes I do cut that paper a little longer and then just snip the edges off at the end. So I decided I'm going to do one more. I'm going to have an extra that I don't use, but I'm fine with that. I'm liking my spacing here. And then I'm just going to rub off that extra adhesive that I used to tack my paper down. Now I can bring in my little mat here, and I'm real happy with the amount of yellow I've got pulled in. And I'm going to mat that or put it down on the white cardstock. The other thing I want to do, because I know my flowers are going to be yellow, I want to add just a little bit of green ink to the corners of my white cardstock. So this is going to be on the corners where those kind of the flower clusters are on the upper left and lower right hand corners, if you recall that from the sketch. So I'm just going to lay down a real light layer of green ink in each one of those corners. So I'm using the Clover ink, and this is the Close to My Heart blending brush, and you can see this ink is pretty bright. So I'm tapping off quite a bit of the ink before I'm coming on to my white cardstock, and not putting a lot of the ink onto the cardstock. So in the end, not a lot of this is actually going to show through. And now I'm ready to layer that all together. I'm getting in a hurry, so everything's kind of sliding around on my desktop here. But now it's ready to get layered together, and I can start pulling in the rest of my pieces together and doing the rest of my dry fit once I've got that prep done. So bringing my photos and my photo mats. All of these photos are 4x4, and then the one on the bottom is 4x5. And I'm going to go ahead and dovetail out these banner pieces, and the way I like to do it is just pinch the edges together and then cut inward. Several people do it different ways, but this is my preferred method. And I'm just going to tuck these in over here on the right and kind of group them together. And then I have a stamp that I'm going to pull in for the other side. This is from the Love Story Scrapbooking stamp set and thin cut. It has this great little thin cut included, and it's one of my favorites for a little journaling piece. The flowers that I'm using for this are these daisies from the Friendship Daisy stamp set and thin cut. And you'll notice I showed you that it has a thin cut with it, but I just wasn't happy with the way the thin cut showed the edges of the flowers, so I actually ended up fussy cutting all of these flowers out, and I just cut them right on the edge of that black line. And this is where I found the opportunity to bring in my brads and my eyelets. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my brads in the center of those white or the yellow daisies. And even though the white's there, I think the white brad really makes it pop. Now here I'm going to bring in my eyelets. So this is my crocodile. I haven't used it in so long, but I'm going to put the hole in my flower first, and then I'm putting the little eyelet in that hole, and then there's a little setter piece on the end of this crocodile. I set that in, and then I just squeeze it together to set the eyelet. Now there are other ways to set eyelets. The crocodile came out after we had the noisy eyelet setters, and then we had a silent eyelet setter, and then the crocodile came out. So this is what I use to set my eyelets. And all of my flowers are popped up. Everything else I have foam tape already mounted on. So these two I'm just going to go ahead and put my foam tape on. And then I can place everything out in their positions on how I kind of envision this to look. So all of these pieces either came from the stamps that I fussy cut, and there's a couple pieces that I pulled off of the sticker sheet, like this one up here I'm going to put over the photo, and then all of the flowers and the leaves have been fussy cut. So if you don't like to fussy cut, this is not a project for you, because not only did I fussy cut all of these items, but I did it in a manner that had quite a bit of precision involved, because I did it right on the line of the ink. So I had to be very slow and precise in my process. So you'll notice I'm laying these out. I'm sticking the leaves under some of the flowers. And the way I'm doing my flowers is I've got 3 on one side and 2 on the other. So I'm kind of coordinating that with the top and the sides. So I'm going to put those down. And then as just a final touch to the layout, I'm bringing in this cross, I guess it's more like an X stitching, faux stitching stamp. and I'm going to put that around the edges, and I was inspired to do this by the sketch as well. So I'm bringing in my T-ruler to help me keep it straight, and then a sticky note just to kind of help me keep it to where everything doesn't, it's lined up properly, and I don't stamp over my flowers. So I'm just going to finish that up, and that wraps up this layout. So lots of bits and pieces involved, but a relatively simple sketch and layout, and that's going to finish this layout for today. Okay, we have a finished layout here. There was a lot of little bits and pieces to this one. So I got all of these embellishments down, and I'm very happy with that. I would say if I did anything different on this layout, I probably would take out the stitching and maybe just use an ink doodle line instead of the stitching, but I still really like how this layout turned out. Let me bring in the sketch and do a little compare. So I pretty much held true to the layout of the photos, my little journaling block here. I don't have a big title, but I think that's okay. I'm happy with that. I've got some little mini subtitles throughout the page here, and I like how I was really inspired by the flowers in the top and bottom corner, so I kind of tried to emulate that as well. So, and I'm going to hold this up, and you can see how I've popped up almost all of these flowers, well, all of them actually, held the leaves down with glue, and everything else is popped up. Bringing in my bingo card, I did incorporate the eyelets and the little flowers, and then I also brought in the brads in the larger flower. Even though the flower was already white in the center, I think the brad just really added an extra element to those flowers. So I'm really happy with how the flowers turned out. I did use my new Copic markers on those flowers in the markering, and I think those turned out really nice. And I also was real happy with my pattern paper and bringing in the yellow to add a little hint of the yellow in that paper. So hopefully you liked that and enjoyed it as much as I did. This was fun. A little bit of work to put together, not something you could do real quickly. A lot of fussy cutting, so if you don't like to fussy cut, this is not a layout for you. But if you liked it, please hit that like button, consider subscribing, and stay tuned as I work through the rest of this month. And we will be back working on some additional sketches. Thank you so much for your time and watching today. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.